Hello, everyone. I'm delighted to be your moderator for today's webinar organized by Funds for NGOs. Today's topic is guidance on crowdfunding and its use as a fundraising tool. I am Manutma and I'm here to facilitate this session. First of all, I want to thank each one of you for taking out time from your busy schedules. Please note that this webinar will run for 60 minutes, which includes 45 minutes of presentation, followed by a 15 minutes of Q&A session. If you have any questions, please use the Q&A option on your webinar screen to post your questions, and we will respond to them during the Q&A session. Let's begin with webinar's objectives. The first objective is to gain greater understanding of what crowdfunding is and how it can be used for fundraising. Second is improve your knowledge of the different types of crowdfunding platforms and what they offer. Learn why crowdfunding works and what are the components of a successful fundraising campaign. Gain an insight into how to develop a campaign and the case for support. Better understand what a specific crowdfunding platform offers and the basic timeline for creating and launching a crowdfunding campaign. Please note that the webinar is being recorded and the recording will be made available in the video section of the Funds for NGOs premium website. And now allow me to introduce today's trainer, Cheryl Hupo. Cheryl is an experienced development consultant and CEO of an international charity. She is an expert trainer and has provided training and capacity building to support international NGOs for more than 20 years. Cheryl has a BA Honors degree in sociology and master's degree in international cooperation and humanitarian aid. She has successfully developed numerous award-winning programs and secured funding from USAID, UK8, Comic Relief, and several high-profile grant-making trusts and foundations. She has been on the judging panel for the prestigious UK Charity Times for the past 3 years, a published author of a guide for NGOs in youth-led peer education, and was conferred a Women of the Decade Award by the Women's Economic Forum in October 2023. Now, I kindly request Cheryl to lead the session and share screen.
Hello, everyone, and a very warm welcome to each of you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join me today. I really appreciate it. Today, I'm going to focus on crowdfunding because it's a topic that many of you have requested, and it's also something that charities and NGOs of all sizes and at different stages of their development can consider. So I hope this training will give you a starting point to think about this further. So crowdfunding is something that perhaps we're all familiar with, but perhaps possibly a bit hazy on what it actually is and how does it work. While some charities, NGOs, social enterprises, and even individuals seem to successfully use it, I think there's still a general scepticism from small NGOs over its effectiveness and its use as a way to raise much needed income. Now, as with all fundraising that relies on other people to donate to a specific cause or project, the success and outcomes can't be guaranteed. It is still an avenue worth considering, especially as NGOs are now being forced to put in place more diverse funding models to avoid being over-reliant on grants. So just to be clear, crowdfunding is typically a method of raising money from a large number of people, usually via the internet. And that is to fund a project, a business venture, charitable cause, or a personal need in some cases. It allows individuals or organisations to present their idea or their cause to the public and collect small and sometimes large contributions from supporters who believe in your project and who want to make a difference. So crowdfunding is successful because it leverages the power of many people giving small amounts. And this is amplified by emotion, storytelling, social sharing, and a sense of urgency. But there's more to it than just numbers. Let's take a look at the psychology behind why people donate to projects that use crowdfunding, because this should help you to better understand what is important when developing your own crowdfunding campaign. So, successful crowdfunding campaigns are full of personal stories and the motivation behind the project needing funding. The stories behind the campaign make people want to be involved and be part of something greater that will contribute to the greater good. There tends to also be a feeling created of togetherness, and that every donation, no matter how small, will help to make things happen. So when people donate a small amount, they believe that their personal donation will directly lead to change. And this is a more trusted, it's a more trusted sort of approach than abstract charity appeals because of the personalisation behind them. And of course, people are like sheep. If they see that others are donating, then new supporters believe and trust in the process and follow the same pattern. So from the beginning, if you plan a crowdfunding campaign, think about making it personal, relatable, and authentic, and from the heart. So crowdfunding campaigns can reach large numbers of people in a way that you're not able to do within your own supporters. And of course, the way this is done is through digital media and whatever leverage you can get through your own networks, mailing lists, social media, partnerships with other organisations, and so on. So when you begin planning a crowdfunding campaign, make sure that you form a list of who and what networks you could tap into and you could ask to help promote the campaign and draw attention to your project. Why else does crowdfunding work as a fundraising tool? Well, a key driver is that anyone can give. And it's not necessary to be wealthy in order to support something that and feel that you are contributing to something that helps make the world a better place. And because of the power of the internet, you have an immediate global community that can be tapped into, so that if you have a project that takes place in, say, Somaliland, for example, this can be seen and it can reach individuals all over the globe within seconds. So this massive reach through the internet means that you could possibly reach diaspora individuals and communities who may support your project but no longer live in the country, as well as other individuals who may have an interest in supporting your cause. So depending on which platform you use and how well known it is, projects promoted using crowdfunding are also shared amongst friends, family, business colleagues, so that there is the social aspect that can create further ripple effects. So let's take a look at the different types of crowdfunding that are typically promoted. So there is the straightforward donation-based campaign, which is probably the one that most of us are familiar with. This is a typical fundraising campaign that promotes a project or a cause and asks people to support by way of donations. People give to the project without any expectation of getting something back. And this is usually the most typical type of campaign carried out by an NGO. Then there is the reward-based campaign, where the campaign focuses on the development or production of something. So this could be a prototype or a test product, it could be a service, or it could be something creative, such as putting on a theatre production, organising an event, or creating something. The campaign asks for donations to help get the project completed, or in some cases started, but then promises to reward donors when they reach the target. So, for example, if it was a theatre production, it may be backstage passes or tickets to the event they contribute to. Equity-based crowdfunding campaigns are those where people ask for support in a business and then give them a share or equity in the business in return. This is obviously much more complex and has legal implications, but I just wanted to flag this up. And then there is the debt-based peer-to-peer lending, where people lend money to each other and are repaid with interest over time. And again, it's something that is much more complicated and has legal implications. But for the purposes of this webinar, I'm going to focus on the donation-based campaign, because this is the most likely type of campaign that an NGO would adopt. So moving on to practicalities, let's take a look at how to begin developing and creating a campaign. Creating a campaign through crowdfunding. So the first step, of course, is to define your goal. What do you need the money for? How much do you need? And what fundraising target do you think is realistic? Remember, you are appealing to the public. So if you have this huge target and a huge mountain to climb, then some people might just think it's not feasible. So really think about that. Now, most, if not all of you, are likely to have various projects and activities that you are already doing that would benefit from funding. So the starting point is to look at your existing projects, your services or activities, and form a basic case for support. To test the process, you may want to keep things simple, and rather than fund a complete project, you may think it better to take aspects of that project and see what funds you can raise to support it. For example, say you have a project that focuses on access to education for orphans and vulnerable children. Rather than create the crowdfunding campaign around the whole project, which could be quite complex because of the different activities and vulnerabilities that you're addressing, you may think, let's just do a crowdfunding campaign around the creation of a borehole at a school to enable a school to have clean drinking water. Or it may be something like the provision of essential books and teaching resources. Both these things are tangible aspects of a project where the general public can understand easily the need for the project and also where the money will go and how it will be spent. So you need to decide on what crowdfunding campaign platform is best for not only your NGO, but also the type of project and campaign you want. So I've done some research, and here are a few digital platforms that you can explore after this webinar. And what you will find is that to actually begin your campaign and use the platforms, there is generally no upfront cost. But rather what happens is that for each donation, the crowdfunding platform will take a percentage commission. and this will vary according to the different platforms. So it's really worth exploring which is best for you. But remember, whilst some may be initially more affordable because you see that the percentage commission is lower, they may also be less well known and so less visible to the general public, which could result in fewer donations. So if you recall earlier in this session, I spoke about the need to make your crowdfunding campaign emotive, to tell a good story about the motivations behind the campaign and the difference it will make. So at the heart of every successful campaign is a compelling story. And of course, using photos and videos would bring that story to life and show where and how the funds will be used to change lives. Some campaigns could offer various awards to supporters as an incentive to donate, but also to demonstrate authenticity and build trust. So when I talk about tiered incentives, this could be things like different awards for different amounts donated. So for example, if somebody donates $10, then they might receive a photo or a certificate to confirm the donation. A larger amount, say $100, may receive an update about the project on a quarterly basis, as well as the certificate, and so on. But you can see those incentives are not linked to monetary incentives. They are just ways of keeping the donor informed without you actually laying out any money. The important thing here is to decide on the amount of donation that could be rewarded and to make sure that whatever you promise, you are able to fulfill it and deliver what you say. So if it's an entrepreneurship project for vulnerable women, if the donation warrants it, you may say that they would receive a product from the women's group when it is up and running. So that kind of thing. So use your IT skills and networks to promote the campaign across social media and all your networks. And remember that what I said about people giving to people. So make sure your story is interesting and authentic, and try and get friends and family to contribute early, even if it's very small amounts, so that it builds momentum and trust and encourages new supporters to give. And then lastly, make sure that you continue to keep supporters engaged and provide them with regular updates on the progress of the project and campaign. So the way you would do that is on the crowdfunding platform. So you would have like a kind of page where you could update progress of your campaign. So with any fundraising campaign, there is a need to build trust and credibility. And the way to do this is through consistent communication so that donations are acknowledged and thanked, that you deliver on anything you promise, and that you keep donors updated on your crowdfunding campaign about progress. Without clear and meaningful communication, you will not only lose trust from donors, but you will also damage the reputation of your NGO, and the long-term consequences of that could threaten your NGO's existence. So it's very important that you make sure you put in place internal systems to keep donors informed, thanked, and updated. So crowdfunding is about building momentum and getting people to back your project. Therefore, setting milestones is a good way to set smaller fundraising targets and not create huge mountain to reach, which could put people off, as I said earlier, because they feel it's not achievable. So if you set yourself a target of $500,000 or $250,000 or something like that, you know, quite often, depending on the project, some people could be put off by that. So look at your project and see what smaller milestones you could put in place to achieve Think about it as taking small steps towards the end goal. People will only donate if they believe what you say is true and that the NGO and its work or the particular project and need for that project is something that they can understand and relate to. So to build trust, use real names and photos and show where the photos were taken and when. If people begin to write comments on your page, then engage with those supporters and respond back. So at all times, maintain transparency and honesty. So let's take a look at how you might develop a campaign for a project, even if you don't have a track record. The important thing here is to build a picture of the problem your project is tackling. What is the problem and why is the problem not going away? So use data that is legitimate and people can verify. So research local and national data and use it to demonstrate the extent of the problem. So, for example, if your problem is about poor nutrition and malnutrition, for example, in a very poor and inaccessible community, and this has led to malnourishment of children and consequently various diseases or life-threatening situations. It would be good to relate the data and figures around child malnourishment and disease in your project area and to quote the source of that data so that people who are looking can actually follow that source and think, oh yes, that's true. It's also important to bring the problem to life by including a description of the surroundings and context of where the project takes place, and some human interest stories that really bring the issue to life. Then show why and how the problem continues or isn't being resolved, and why and how your project is filling the gap and improving things. Show in your campaign case for support what the solution to that problem is and how your project and NGO is addressing the problem and improving things. Explain why your project is different and how it's not repeating other activities. It's important to show that the project can continue beyond the funding provided and how donations will leave a lasting legacy. So donors will trust you more if you're able to show that you are working with other trusted providers or governments and how it enhances other work that's being done. So this might be a project that is also working in partnership or supporting a school or a health clinic or a hospital or another establishment. And then you can explain this in your case for support on the crowdfunding campaign. So if you are recently formed and haven't yet built a long track record in your field, the way to increase credibility and build your reputation is to highlight the experience and expertise of your team and advisors who may also back the project. So if you've got some high-profile people who might give you some quotes or endorsements to support your campaign, you can put that on your page. It will really help. Be open about people's expertise and skills and use endorsements from respected colleagues and networks to provide endorsements and trust in your NGO and also the project that you're seeking funding for. And crucially, make sure that any donor understands your NGO has the capacity and resources to deliver the project and achieve the set outcomes. So All crowdfunding projects should be clearly costed and have a budget that can explain exactly what things cost and break down those costs in a way that donors can understand. Remember, you are more than likely to be appealing to people who have no development background, but who just want to make a difference and feel that their contribution is helping to make the world a better place. So you really need to try and keep things simple. So keep the ask low. So for example, you could say something like $20 will buy 5 library books that will be available to 500 children in this school, and you can name the school. Also, think about how you will measure success and what success will look like, not from the fundraising, but from the project's point of view. So it's not about achieving your fundraising target, but more about the impact and the outcomes that will be achieved with the funding that you have secured. So it's really good if you've got a baseline to measure your progress against. So what was the situation before you started and how is it changing? So crowdfunding is about creating a sense of urgency, a real call for action, getting people to feel that they might contribute. What they might contribute is something that is long lasting and possibly life-changing. So show in your case for support how your project will change lives, but also that it is something that could be taken into other areas and reach more people so that it's scalable. If you can get any in-kind support at an early stage, then it's a good way to show that other people are already behind the project and want it to succeed and believe in it. If potential donors see that other people are supporting you, even if it's in a non-monetary way, it will increase the likelihood of them also supporting you and donating money. Remember that when developing a crowd funding campaign, you need to create this sense of urgency to make each potential donor feel that he or she is part of something greater and that their individual contribution will make a real difference. By explaining why support matters will help to personalise the appeal and help individuals to feel that you are appealing to them personally. So using terms like you rather than a third person. So when you're writing your copy for the appeal, use those words, you, not it or they. Let's take a look at the practicalities of setting up a crowdfunding campaign. And for the purposes of this training, I'm going to focus on one platform called Global Giving. So Global Giving performs rigorous due diligence on every organisation in the global giving community to make sure that they are performing charitable work in a transparent and accountable manner, and that every NGO meets the requirements for registration with their local government. So you have to be properly registered with all the right documents. It has customised vetting for corporate giving programs, and it's actually facilitated international grant making to 175 countries across the world. So what it does is it uses its platform to allow NGOs to create their own crowdfunding campaigns, but then it also donates as a business to charitable causes across the world. So it positions itself as more than a fundraising platform, but more like a partner that works with NGOs rather than for NGOs. So just on a basic level, even so, as I said earlier, they take a percentage from the amount raised. So let's just say, even on a basic level, if we take the highest support fee that it charges, at, say, 12% plus the transaction fee, that would be a maximum of 15%. So for every $1 pledged, you would receive a net amount of 85 cents. And the minimum donation on the site is 10 US dollars. So there are two types of fees retained by global giving. So as I've said, the first type is a non-profit fee that varies from 5 to 12%, according to the amount of funds an organisation has raised, and the registered country of the organisation. And the second type of fee is a further 3% third-party processing fee that is assessed on all donations. But the thing about global giving is that it's a well-known platform. So if people are looking to donate to a cause, it's very likely that even if they put in keywords into Google, global giving will come up. So you can see here, I've just given you a quick look at the fees. So if, say, for example, £5,000 raised, they will take 12%. Okay. And you can see here what they've also direct donations to projects run by US or UK registered organisations, and what they have done there. So that just gives you a little bit of background as to how they work on their fees. So it's important that you give sufficient time to prepare a crowdfunding campaign and get all the different elements in place before you launch publicly. So there are many different platforms you could use, but because I'm focusing on global giving, I'm just going to talk through how you might do it if you were to use global giving. So say if you wanted to raise $20,000 for example, a mobile health clinic in Somaliland, I would typically allow up to 3 months which for the preparation of that campaign and the fundraising. So the breakdown of that would be the application phase might take 2 to 3 weeks. So if you wanted to register on Global Giving and you need to upload all your registration documents, provide a project description, your budget, your photos, all of those, and Global Giving look at that and vet it, that process might take up to 2 to 3 weeks. And within that, you would also need to be looking at building your campaign page, getting the photos and the compelling visuals, deciding on the donations, the level of donations, and things like that. And then, of course, the planning behind that. So looking at all your key supporters, who you might be able to reach through diaspora, social media plan, and press, and so on. So, okay. So you can see if you were completely vetted and you've got everything launched, ready to go, and you've got a number of supporters that have already contributed a small amount and you can go public, then you could be looking between 8 to 10 weeks. So why is global giving good for this kind of timeline? So it supports longer campaigns. So it's not limited to short-term projects where some crowdfunding is very limited by time. And it has a strong base of donors who are constantly, they're wealthy individuals, they're not wealthy individuals, but they scroll on global giving all the time, looking for development causes to support. So, you know, if you use the right keywords, then your project may come up, even if they're not looking for it, and they may donate. And you can keep fundraising even after you've hit your target. So remember, it's better to start publicly by demonstrating some funding has already been pledged so that you can build momentum to the project when you launch. So this early traction will help kickstart the campaign for the greatest chance of success. And of course, this really helps with publicity and social media, where you could then begin to announce how the campaign has just been launched and pledges have already been secured. And of course, for those of you who, you know, don't have the IT skills, you can always look for really skilled volunteers to help you. It's a perfect opportunity for an internship. So successful campaigns are driven through good and open communications. Thanking supporters promptly and keeping them informed and consistently maintaining a sense of urgency using authentic and meaningful communication, and keeping supporters, making them feel that they're personally making a difference by getting involved. So how do potential donors find out about your campaign? You know, does it come up on Google search? So as I said before, I've chosen global giving as an example to demonstrate how a successful crowdfunding campaign might work, because it's probably one of the most best known fundraising platforms, so that it's already attracting browsers. Within the platform, it's also possible to search using keywords, so that if somebody is generally searching for a cause that is close to them, and they may perhaps have a specific country in mind, for example, education projects, Uganda, and they search on just using those words, then it's possible that all the projects associated with education in Uganda will appear. And of course, they also feature matched themed pages and can recommend or highlight projects to corporate donors or individual philanthropists. And because successful crowdfunding relies on visibility and being picked up digitally through the internet, it's essential that you include keywords in the copy you write, that you include backlinks to your website and your social media, and that you use somebody with the right digital skills to put these things in place. So, as I said, if you don't have the skills and experience within your NGO, then you could consider using somebody as a freelancer to do those things for you. But you could also look at it as a possible student project or an internship or a volunteer project, and advertise for somebody to do that for you on your behalf. And of course, people will still find you through search engines like Google. But for your project to come up on general internet searches, to get the most out of the campaign and be visible, it's best to use somebody skilled to help this side of things. So you would develop the campaign, the content, what you're going to say, the messaging, all of those things. You could even do the application to the global giving platform or whichever platform you use, but then get somebody to do the technical backlinks and other IT work that you need doing. Be aware that your campaign success will be determined by how much time and effort you put into using your own networks and promoting and encouraging existing supporters, diaspora, faith groups, mailing lists, to encourage pledges to the campaign. You would also need to reach out through different social media platforms and communications, such as WhatsApp groups, Facebook groups, Instagram, X, and so on, maybe TikTok, all sorts of things like that, along with amplifying your campaign through professional networks and businesses. So, you know, networking, going to meetings, telling people about what you're doing and getting them to support. So corporates would be a really good angle where you could ask businesses to let their employees know and to ask them to donate. Because remember, crowdfunding is about volume. It's about reaching large numbers of people who give small amounts, typically. So you're not asking people to donate, you know, hundreds of dollars. You know, you're looking at $10 probably. So essentially, what's important here is to plan and execute the marketing and publicity across every outlet that you have access to. So spend time on crafting your appeal so that it really resonates with potential donors, and create a project title that will grab attention. It's important that you make the most of visuals, such as photos and videos, because it's these things that sell the project and will bring it to life. And as said before, aim to secure pledges of support before you launch the campaign, and engage with supporters regularly and provide updates, even if donations are slow and not immediately forthcoming. So if you launch and you find that you haven't got lots of donations coming in, still keep people updated and still create a sense of urgency. So that brings me to the end of this training. I do hope that you've found it useful, and that it will give you some food for thought. And for those of you who have thought about crowdfunding but felt a bit intimidated by it, I hope this will open your eyes to how you might go about doing it. And I'm very happy to take questions from you now. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Cheryl, for the insightful presentation. Participants, now we have started Q&A. So please, you can send in your questions. The first question is, as a new NGO with no track record, crowdfunding option is a viable one for me. My question is, are there any disadvantages of crowdfundings that new CEOs of NGOs like me should take note of?
I think that's a very good question. What I would say is that if you are a new NGO, then your reputational risk is really, really important. So what you really need to be doing is building trust in donors. Okay. And so whatever you promise, you must be able to deliver, that your project is authentic and real. And that, as I said, if you use data to back up the evidence for the project and the need for the project, it will build your authenticity. So I think the risk, what I would say for a new NGO, is to make sure that you can deliver what you promise. And so it's important that you really spend time on crafting that appeal to make it look as professional as possible, but also authentic. So you know, sometimes if something looks too slick, then people might think, well, I don't know, they look like they've got lots of money. But if you kind of like are very honest about your own situation, if you are a founder-led NGO, you've just started an NGO, you know, if you tell your backstory, what made you start the NGO? Why was the NGO started? Show a photo of where you started, how you started, and use, as I said, if you've got people who can endorse your work, then that will really, really help to build your credibility. So what I would say is the biggest risk is reputational risk, and that's what you need to be careful of if you're a new NGO. And to make sure that you've got all the internal systems in place so that when the money starts coming in, you're not in a position where you know, you don't know what you're doing with it and how you're going to use it.
Thank you, Cheryl, for your input. The next question is, what are the key factors that determine the success of a crowdfunding campaign for NGOs or non-profits?
I mean, yeah, it's another good question. I would say authenticity, you know, it's like crowdfunding. Imagine what you're doing is you're putting yourself out there to the general public and you're reaching people all over the world. So to get people to believe in you and to really believe that even if they donate that $10, that $10 is actually going somewhere where it's going to really make a difference, that is the reason people are successful. So sometimes, you know, I've seen crowdfunding campaigns where a small social business, you know, what they might be making a particular product, but what they'll do is they'll show photos of themselves, they'll show photos of their workspace, you know, the sewing machines that they were using, the fabrics that they're using as tailors, you know, this kind of thing. And they'll explain why they can't afford to do it themselves, you know, how much they've done themselves, but how much they need other people to make it work. And so, you know, I would say what you need to do before you start registering on any crowdfunding campaign is to really, really sort of start looking at different campaigns on the internet, looking at what works and what is it about them that makes them authentic. Why would you donate to certain causes? But the main thing is about building trust and to make your project authentic, that every donation will count and that you are transparent. So even if you are struggling, you can still say that on your campaign, you know, and you can invite people to come and visit your projects or things like that. So I would say the best thing to get success is to be authentic, and meaningful, and to really show that every donation will make a difference. And as I said, appeal to the individual donor. So don't write things like $10 will make a difference by doing this. It's better to say, if you donate this, you will be helping by this. So make your content focusing on the first person. So write it as if you're talking to an individual person.
Thank you for your input, Cheryl. The next question is, how should small organizations with limited online presence prepare before launching a crowdfunding campaign?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good That's a good question. So, I think that we can't get away from the fact that social media is really powerful. And I think that if you haven't got social media up and running, then I think you need to. So I think, it's worth setting up an Instagram account, having a Facebook page, even if you don't have many followers. Have a Facebook page, have an Instagram account, put photos of your projects. You don't have to be clever or come up with anything, just show that you're there. And TikTok is growing massively. So again, just small little videos of your project area and what it's like, with captions or a voiceover. They can be shot on your mobile phone, that kind of thing. Because the thing with social media is about it kind of gains traction. So what happens is you only need one person to share it and then another person to share that. And then before you know it, you're beginning to snowball the number of people reaching you. So I would say if you don't have any social media or limited social media, I think it's definitely worth getting on there and doing it and spend some time on that while you're developing your campaign. So don't think, oh, well, we can't do any crowdfunding because we haven't got any social media, because there will be quite a long time to prepare. You need quite a long time to prepare your campaign. So while you're writing the copy and you're preparing the campaign and you're sort of working out what to say, get your social media up and running. And you can even say, we are going to start a crowdfunding campaign. And you can start showing the pictures of the videos of where you work and things like that without anything else really. So I would say, yes, you have to do both. I don't think you can ignore social media.
Thank you for your input, Cheryl. The next question is, I don't know, is this related to topic or not? Do you have typical advice since many NGOs are in difficult situation because of US policy?
Well, I mean, I think that, as I said, that more and more NGOs across the world and, charities and NGOs are being forced to look at other ways of fundraising and not depending on grants in the way that they used to. So the fundraising landscape has really, really changed. And any NGO that ignores that will get into trouble. So I think the first thing I would say is that you cannot ignore the fact that the fundraising landscape has changed and that this over reliance on grants is just not feasible anymore. So in that case, every NGO, to protect its future, needs to diversify its income. And so they need to find other ways. That doesn't mean to say they can't apply for grants, but you just have to acknowledge that the grants that you may have got in the past are not likely to be in the same volume and for the same amounts. So they're going to be smaller and less frequent. So you need to look at other ways to diversify your income. And so you have to look at different ways that you can bring in money to support your projects and your NGOs. And that's why crowdfunding has been put forward as one of those things for you to consider.
Thank you for your input, Cheryl. The next question is, what month is best to launch a global crowdfunding campaign? And how many campaigns can one run in a year?
I don't know that. I don't know the answer to that. I'm really sorry. I think that it depends on which platform you use. So I think it's, what I would do is I would start small with a small test campaign. As I said, I gave that example of an education program supporting orphans and vulnerable children, for example. And within that program, that could be a multifaceted program. So it's not just about helping orphans and vulnerable children access education. It's not about paying school fees. That might be some of it, but there's psychosocial support, there's other vulnerabilities that need to be taken into account. There might be feeding programs, there might be books, uniforms, all sorts of things that make up a wider program. So rather than create a crowdfunding campaign on that entire program, if you're new to crowdfunding, you could take an element of that program and, as I said, go for something that is tangible. Remember, you are appealing to people who are most likely not development experts. They just want to make a difference. So if you start going in on something that is quite complicated, behavior change, for example, then people just won't get it. But if you go for something like a borehole that this school needs, then that is something that can easily be explained why it's needed, why it's important, and people can understand where that money is going. So you could take an element of a bigger program and just test the crowdfunding tool, if you like, and test it by doing something small and see where that takes you. And if you see that it's successful, then think, okay, right, now we can learn from that. We can develop something bigger. So in terms of when to launch a crowdfunding campaign, it's a difficult one because there are certain times of the year where people tend to be more generous. You have a certain, you've got certain faith groups where it's important to them, Diwali, you've got Eid, you've got Christmas. In some ways, sometimes you tap into the generosity of people because that's the time that they typically give. And other times, people are already spending a lot of money and are already giving at that time. And so it might take away from that appeal. I would sort of just have a look on research on the internet and look at crowdfunding campaigns and think about the timing that is right for you. But you might find that it would work to associate it with a faith-based festival or an event of some kind.
Thank you, Cheryl, for your input. Participants, due to time limitations, we cannot cover all the questions posted here. As now we have reached the end of the webinar, I want to thank each one of you for your active participation. And we would also like to thank you, Cheryl, on behalf of the entire team. Participants, please take a moment to fill out the feedback form for today's session. Your input is crucial in helping us to improve. If you have any questions or suggestions, feel free to contact us at support@fundsforngos.org. The feedback form will appear on your screen in a moment. Once again, thank you, Cheryl, and to all the participants, and we look forward to seeing you in our next webinar. Thank you.
Okay, thanks everyone. Take care. Bye for now.
Bye.